Here's a question that nobody asks at dinner parties, but everyone is quietly thinking. How much of what you're seeing is actually real? Not philosophically, financially, because there's a version of wealth that exists purely for an audience. A performance of prosperity, carefully curated, expensive to maintain, and completely hollow underneath. And the unsettling part? Most of us have been fooled by it. Some of us might be living it right now without fully realizing it. Today, we're going to break down 10 specific signs that someone is what financial researchers and behavioral economists increasingly call fake rich. Not struggling, not broke, but not actually building anything either. Earning well, spending better, saving nothing. Trapped in a loop that looks like success from the outside, but feels like quicksand on the inside. And I'll tell you this up front. Sign number 7 is the one almost nobody catches. Even financially savvy people get this one wrong. So stay with me. Let's get into it. Sign number 1. Their largest monthly expense is a depreciating asset. Not a mortgage. Not investments. Not savings contributions. A car payment. There's nothing inherently wrong with financing a vehicle. Life requires transport. But there's a very specific pattern that shows up consistently among people who project wealth without actually building it, and it looks like this. The moment income increases, so does the car. Entry-level job, economy car. Promotion, mid-range SUV. Another raise, luxury lease. The car scales with the salary, not with the net worth. Here's the financial reality that most people gloss over. A leased luxury vehicle at, say, $850 a month isn't just a payment. It's $10,200 a year directed entirely towards something that will never belong to you, never appreciate, and never return value. And the reason people do this isn't stupidity, it's signaling. The car tells the world something about status before a single word is spoken. The truly wealthy, by contrast, often have a strikingly different relationship with cars. Warren Buffett drove a battered Cadillac for years. The research behind the book, The Millionaire Next Door, found that among American millionaires surveyed, the most commonly purchased vehicle brand was not Mercedes or BMW, it was Toyota. Wealth isn't parked in the driveway. Fake wealth often is. Sign number 2. They can tell you exactly what something costs, but never what it's worth. Pay attention to how someone talks about money, because it reveals everything. Fake rich people discuss price. Real wealth thinks about value, return, and trade-off. These are fundamentally different conversations. Someone who is fake rich will tell you their watch cost $12,000. What they won't tell you, or don't know, is that the same $12,000 invested in a broad index fund 15 years ago would be worth somewhere north of $45,000 today. The watch, meanwhile, is worth less than they paid for it. This isn't about being miserable or refusing to enjoy life. It's about a mental framework. People who are genuinely building wealth are constantly, almost automatically, running a calculation in the background. What is the opportunity cost of this decision? If that calculation never happens, if purchases are evaluated purely by the number on the receipt and never by what else that number could have done, that's a sign of financial thinking that prioritizes appearance over accumulation. Sign number 3. Their social circle requires a subscription. This one is subtle, but it's powerful. Some social environments are quietly, and sometimes not so quietly, expensive to maintain. The restaurant is always upscale. The holidays are always extravagant. The event is always ticketed and premium. And because nobody wants to be the person who suggests somewhere cheaper or admits they're watching their budget, everyone just keeps up. Behavioral economists call this social consumption. Spending that isn't driven by personal desire, but by the perceived expectations of a group. And it compounds rapidly. Because you're not just spending your money, you're spending it on experiences shaped entirely by someone else's comfort level. The people in these circles who are genuinely wealthy often don't notice the cost. The people who are fake rich are silently calculating every round of drinks, every weekend away, every group gift. The fix isn't to abandon friends. It's to notice whether your financial choices are actually yours or whether they're an admission fee for being seen in a certain light. Sign number 4. They have no liquidity. Here's a scenario that plays out more often than you'd think. Someone drives to a business event in a $70,000 vehicle, wearing a $4,000 watch, and genuinely cannot put their hands on $5,000 in cash within 48 hours without either selling something or calling in a favor. Their assets are entirely illiquid, tied up in depreciating goods, lifestyle commitments, and the visual infrastructure of appearing successful. Liquidity is one of the most underrated concepts in personal finance. It means having accessible, flexible funds, money that can move when life requires it to, an emergency fund, a cash reserve, something that doesn't require a loan or a liquidation event. A widely cited 2024 survey by Bankrate found that roughly 56% of Americans wouldn't be able to cover an unexpected $1,000 expense from savings alone. That figure cuts across income brackets in a way that surprises most people. High earners aren't immune. In fact, high earners with high lifestyle costs are sometimes among the most illiquid people of all. Looking rich and being liquid are often mutually exclusive, because the more money tied up in looking wealthy, the less money available to actually function with financial freedom. Sign number 5. Their confidence peaks during good months and collapses during bad ones. Real financial security doesn't fluctuate wildly with a single pay cycle. Fake wealth does. Watch how someone handles a slow month, an unexpected bill, or a period of reduced income. Do they have systems that absorb the disruption, savings buffers, income diversification, a financial cushion? Or does the whole carefully maintained image begin to strain at the edges? Genuine wealth is structural. It's built into the architecture of how someone manages money, not just visible during the months when the numbers happen to work out. The fake rich experience a kind of financial anxiety that's invisible to the outside world precisely because the outside world only sees the good months, the new purchase, the holiday photo, the upgrade. What they don't see is the credit card balance that funded it, the savings account that never quite grows, and the low-level, persistent stress that lives just below the surface. Sign number 6. Everything they own is branded. Nothing they own is paid off. There's a very specific version of this pattern that deserves attention. Someone furnishes their life with the visible markers of wealth, the designer brand, the premium label, the recognizable logo, while carrying significant consumer debt beneath the surface. The items are real. The ownership is not. Credit, used well, is a genuinely powerful financial tool. But credit used as a mechanism for performing a lifestyle that isn't yet affordable is something else entirely. It's borrowing tomorrow's money to look a certain way today. What's particularly revealing is the psychology underneath it. For many people in this pattern, the brands serve a function. They communicate, "I've made it," to an audience, sometimes to others, sometimes to themselves. The logo becomes a shorthand for a status that the bank balance hasn't confirmed yet. The financially secure, again and again in the research, show almost the reverse preference. Generic products, older cars, modest homes, and investment accounts that would astonish you. If you're finding this video genuinely useful, this is a great moment to hit that like button and subscribe. We cover the financial patterns that most people walk past without recognizing, and there's a lot more where this came from. Sign number 7. They've optimized for income, not for the gap. This is the one most people miss. And it's the one that separates people who are truly building wealth from people who are stuck on a very expensive treadmill. Here's the principle. Wealth is not income. Wealth is not assets minus liabilities in the abstract. In practical, daily terms, wealth is the gap, the distance between what you earn and what you spend. Someone earning $250,000 a year and spending $245,000 of it is building virtually nothing. Someone earning $65,000 a year and spending $42,000 of it is accumulating meaningful financial momentum. The gap is everything. And here's the trap that most high earners fall into. The gap closes automatically as income rises because lifestyle inflation is not a conscious choice for most people, it's gravitational. Every pay rise quietly attracts new expenses. The larger apartment that seemed like a reward. The nicer car that felt justified. The restaurants, the travel, the subscriptions, the memberships. None of it, individually, feels excessive. Together, it eliminates the gap entirely. In a 2023 report from Empower, researchers found that people earning between $100,000 and $150,000 annually saved at a lower rate than people earning $50,000 to $75,000 when measured as a percentage of income. Read that again. The higher earners were saving less of their money, proportionally, than people earning half as much, because the gap had closed. Fake rich people optimize for income. They chase the bigger salary, the better title, the higher rate. Real wealth optimizes for the gap and protects it deliberately, aggressively, and sometimes quietly. When you meet someone who earns well but will retire with very little, it's almost always because nobody guarded the gap. Sign number 8. They treat net worth as a future problem. There's a pattern in the language people use around money that reveals a great deal about where they actually are. I'll start investing once I've sorted out my debt. I'll think about retirement savings once I'm earning more. I'll get serious about this stuff next year. Now, none of those statements are absurd on their face. Debt is real. Competing priorities are real. But among people who are genuinely fake rich, these phrases are less a plan and more a permanent deferral. The future keeps moving forward. The present stays expensive, and the net worth conversation never quite arrives. Compounding is indifferent to intentions. The investor who starts at 25 with modest contributions will, at 65, comfortably outpace someone who waits until 40 to start investing larger amounts. The mathematics here are unambiguous and fairly dramatic. Time in the market, not timing the market. The principle is so well established it's almost boring, except that millions of people understand it intellectually and continue to defer anyway. The fake rich know the concept. They just keep it in the abstract, somewhere in the future, behind whichever current expense feels most justified today. Sign number 9. Their self-worth and their spending move together. This is the most psychologically complex sign on this list, and arguably the most important. For a significant number of people in the fake rich pattern, spending isn't really about the object. It's about how the purchase feels. The momentary elevation of status. The sensation of capability, of arrival, of being someone who can afford this. The item is almost secondary. Researchers studying consumer behavior have repeatedly found a strong link between what's called status anxiety and expenditure on visible, recognizable goods. Status anxiety, in simple terms, is the fear of being perceived as lesser. And it spikes when people feel uncertain about their position, during a career plateau, after a social comparison, following a period of feeling overlooked or unrecognized. The problem is that spending for emotional regulation is one of the most expensive coping mechanisms available. The lift it provides is real, but brief. The cost it extracts is real and permanent. People who have genuinely reached a place of financial security tend to show a diminishing relationship between their spending and their sense of self. They buy what they enjoy. They don't need the purchase to tell them who they are. That distinction, subtle in conversation, dramatic in outcome, shapes the entire financial trajectory. Sign number 10. Their financial story only goes forward. The last sign is one of the most telling. Genuinely wealthy people can account for where their money is and where it's going, but they can also tell you, with some precision, where it has been. They have assets, not just income. They've been building for years, and the evidence shows. Fake rich people are almost exclusively future tense. The big deal that's coming. The investment they're about to make. The bonus that's going to change everything. The promotion that's just around the corner. There's always a narrative about incoming wealth, and very little in the past that shows a pattern of accumulating it. This isn't cynicism. Sometimes things genuinely haven't worked out. Life is not predictable, and financial hardship can hit anyone. But there's a specific version of this pattern that's less about circumstance and more about psychology. The future is always where the real wealth will arrive. The present is always a moment to look the part until it does. Real wealth building is retrospective as much as it is aspirational. There are numbers behind it, savings accounts that have grown, investments that have compounded, decisions that paid off over time. The story goes in both directions. If someone can only tell you what they're going to have, but can't show you what they've built, that's worth noticing. So here's where we land. The 10 signs of fake rich aren't about judging anyone. This isn't about pointing fingers at the person driving the least luxury vehicle or eating at the expensive restaurant. The patterns we've covered today are so common, so culturally reinforced, and so psychologically understandable that most people slip into them without any conscious decision at all. The car that signals success. The brand that communicates arrival. The lifestyle that says, before you've said a word, that you're someone worth taking seriously. These things are deeply human. The desire for status, for belonging, for being seen, that's not a flaw. It's wiring. But there is a cost. And the cost isn't just financial, though it is substantially financial. It's the freedom you trade. Every dollar redirected from building into performing is a dollar that doesn't compound. Every year spent closing the gap with expensive signaling is a year that isn't spent actually widening it. The people in the research, in the data, and frankly in real life, who end up with genuine financial security, they usually don't look like the person you'd point to and think, that person has money. They're often quiet about it. They've optimized for things that aren't visible. They've protected the gap. They've let compounding work for longer than felt necessary. They've bought the boring thing when the exciting thing was on offer. And at some point, usually gradually and then all at once, the gap between how they look and what they have becomes very significant. The question worth sitting with isn't whether you recognize anyone on this list. It's whether on some of these signs you might recognize yourself, and what, if anything, you want to do about that. That's the real conversation. And it only requires honesty with one person. Before you go, I want to hear from you in the comments. Which of these 10 signs surprised you most? Was it the one about the gap, the one about liquidity, or did sign number 7 land differently than you expected? Drop your answer below. These conversations are genuinely one of my favorite parts of making this content. Thanks for watching. Take care of the gap.